We begin with breaking news from Washington, where Donald Trump has delivered a major salvo in his trade war, this time aimed squarely at Canada.
Should now be hit all goods coming from Canada with an additional 35% tariff. And this is one of the many that Donald Trump, according to these letters he's sending around to different countries.
Colombia, we're just a short paddle from LNG Canada, the country's first ever large-scale liquefied natural gas export facility. It's a big deal.
You don't get a lot of firsts these days, but for the first time, Canadian liquefied natural gas is heading overseas. Fuel from the LNG Canada export terminal in Kitimat, BC, is now sailing towards.
Demand is, in the case of LNG, Asia's the primary market, but now Europe, with the loss of Russian gas, is also a significant market.
A new front has opened in the trade war at exactly 9:03 a.m. Eastern on July 18, 2025. A letter from the White House arrived in Ottawa. It wasn't a request, it was a warning. Effective August 1st, all Canadian goods entering the United States will face a 35% tariff. No exemptions, no carve-outs, no bilateral talks, just a blanket penalty on a trade relationship that, for over a century, was considered one of the most reliable on Earth. But while President Trump hit send, Canada had already set sail. On June 30th, 2025, a liquefied natural gas tanker left the coast of British Columbia, bound for South Korea. The cargo was clean, compressed, and Canadian, and for the first time in the country's history, it didn't pass through American hands. It sailed straight to Asia. The geopolitical message was unmistakable. Canada no longer needs the United States to reach the world, and that may be the most consequential shift in North American trade in a generation. YouTube is not the biggest fan of content like this, but we believe people deserve to hear the truth. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep going. We really appreciate the support. For more than 30 years, Canada's natural gas exports were funneled entirely through pipelines into the United States. In 2024 alone, over $8 billion worth of gas, roughly 8.8 billion cubic feet per day, crossed the border. Canada was a supplier. The US was the gatekeeper. That arrangement worked until tariffs turned the gate into a wall. In March 2025, Washington slapped a 25% duty on Canadian exports. Energy products were hit with an additional 10% surcharge. Suddenly, Canadian producers were stuck selling at a discount, with their contracts hanging by a thread. Ottawa didn't retaliate, it restructured. And the tool for that restructuring was a $40 billion Canadian project.
We have some breaking news coming in. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking right now after the U.S. slapped Canada with 25% tariffs. Let's listen.
So today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada.
Let's make no mistake about it. As I mentioned to the Prime Minister, the rest of the premiers, we need to be ready. We need to be ready to fight. This fight is coming 100% on January the 20th or January 21st. We don't know what extent this fight's going to go to, but we need to line up everything that we're going to tariff and make sure that the tariff, the money that's coming from these tariffs, don't go into a federal bank account sitting there somewhere. It needs to be immediately distributed right across the province equally.
LNG Canada. Built in Kitimat, British Columbia, LNG Canada is more than infrastructure. It is sovereignty in steel and concrete. The terminal compresses natural gas to minus 165 degrees Celsius, reducing its volume by over 600-fold. That gas is then loaded onto ocean tankers bound for Asia. No detours, no tariffs, no permission slips from Washington. The first vessel to sail was the Gaslog Glasgow. It reached South Korea in just 10 days. For comparison, similar US shipments from the Gulf Coast, routed through the Panama Canal, take up to 20. That time difference isn't just about shipping, it's about geopolitics. Because in 2025, every day saved is a layer of US leverage lost. Asia is hungry, Canada is ready. Japan is ramping up LNG imports by 20 million tons annually. South Korea is expanding its LNG storage by 50%. China is signing long-term contracts years in advance. And now, for the first time, Those contracts include Canadian supply, delivered directly without going through the US. The significance of this shift cannot be overstated. Canada has moved from being a side route in the North American pipeline system to a direct supplier in the global LNG market. And the consequences are compounding. Behind the terminal is a pipeline, and behind the pipeline is a movement. The Coastal GasLink pipeline, nearly 700 kilometers long, connects the shale gas fields of British Columbia's Montney Basin to the LNG Canada terminal. That pipeline was not just permitted, it was co-owned. The Haisla Nation, whose ancestral lands surround Kitimat, holds equity in the project. This is not token participation, this is structural change. More than 5.88 billion Canadian dollars in contracts were awarded to Indigenous and local firms during the project's construction phase. Over 50,000 jobs were created, and environmental safeguards, including electric compression, methane detection, and hydro-powered cooling, make this one of the lowest emission LNG facilities on the planet. While Washington tweets, Canada builds. While tariffs escalate, tankers depart. Every ship that leaves Kitimat is a statement. Canada is no longer bound to the US grid. But Ottawa is not stopping at one terminal. Plans are already underway for a second LNG export project at Prince Rupert, which would cut shipping time to Asia down to 8 days. The proposed Cedar LNG terminal, led by the Haisla Nation, is set to become the first Indigenous majority-owned LNG export facility in North America. Combined, these projects could position Canada among the top 5 LNG exporters in the world, alongside Qatar, Australia, and the United States. But with one major difference, Canada's exports are increasingly defined not just by volume, but by values. Values that buyers are noticing. Asian importers now tie procurement to ESG, environmental, social, and governance scores. That means carbon intensity, Indigenous equity, and long-term political stability all matter as much as price. And in each category, Canada holds a lead. LNG Canada is powered by British Columbia's hydroelectric grid, giving it one of the lowest emission profiles globally. Canada's carbon pricing system, strict regulatory oversight, and transparent governance give buyers confidence they can lock in stable supply without future reputational risks. In 2025, that trust is currency, especially as other producers, Qatar, the US, and Australia, face rising scrutiny over human rights, labor practices, and environmental degradation. Canada's model is far from perfect, but it is moving in the right direction, and that direction is drawing capital, contracts, and credibility. The expansion has already begun. Phase 2 of LNG Canada will double capacity to 28 million tons per year. But scaling up means scaling responsibility. New compressor units, additional berths, deeper port dredging, more rail-to-terminal coordination. Another wave of investment, estimated at over 20 billion Canadian dollars, is now being negotiated with buyers in Japan, Korea, and Europe. And these buyers are no longer passive, they are strategic co-investors, bringing not only capital, but demand guarantees that help secure financing and regulatory alignment. This is a new kind of energy relationship, not one of dependency, but one of coordination. Washington, meanwhile, is stuck. New US LNG terminals face court injunctions, permitting delays, and pipeline lawsuits. Keystone XL remains unfinished. Mountain Valley continues to stall. The US Gulf Coast is congested. And now, with the White House pursuing an aggressive tariff strategy, American exporters are facing diplomatic blowback across the Atlantic and the Pacific. By contrast, Canada has streamlined its permitting system under the One Canadian Economy Act, allowing critical infrastructure projects to fast-track through a national approval window. Interprovincial conflicts are being ironed out. And Indigenous communities are increasingly equity partners, not just stakeholders. While Washington isolates itself, Canada is building a coalition. Let us be clear, this is not just a trade story, it is a geopolitical shift. Tariffs are no longer the weapon, energy access is. And as long as the United States continues to weaponize trade, allies will quietly look elsewhere. Many already have. Europe has signed long-term contracts with Canadian hydrogen exporters. Japan is considering a shared battery supply corridor with Vancouver, South Korea is aligning LNG storage specs with Kitimat's compression benchmarks. The US is still a major producer, but it is no longer the central broker. That seat is now up for grabs, and Canada is reaching for it, with strategy, not spectacle. So what happens next? If Canada completes Prince Rupert, Asia will have a direct 8-day line to Western Canada. That shipping advantage, combined with clean LNG and political stability, could corner a third of Northeast Asia's future demand. That's not competition, that's replacement. And if Trump pushes ahead with a 35% tariff on Canadian imports, he will only accelerate the process. Midwest refineries that depend on Canadian natural gas will face rising prices. US companies trying to buy low-carbon LNG will be outbid. Every dollar spent on trade war policy will be one less dollar spent on energy security. And Canada, it will just keep sailing. Let us know what you think in the comments. And do not forget to subscribe to Auto News and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest political economic updates.